They won't say it out loud. They'll cover it with headlines, twist it in newsrooms, and hide it behind fear. But deep down, behind closed doors, the West carries a secret fear. Not of bombs, not of terror, not of chaos. No, what they fear is something far more powerful. They fear a discipline they cannot break, a unity they cannot divide, a strength that doesn't crumble under pressure. They fear Islam's real power, power that's not built on weapons, but on hearts that bow only to the Almighty. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. We're exposing the truth they don't want you to see. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the world's most powerful nations tremble at the rise of Islam's unshakable force. The West often presents Islam through a lens of fear, portraying it as a threat associated with violence, extremism, and oppression. But beneath these narratives lies a much deeper, unspoken fear, not of terrorism or conflict, but of Islam's real power, its ability to build unshakable discipline, unity, and purpose in the hearts of its followers. This is the kind of power that does not rely on governments, armies, or wealth, but on an internal foundation that cannot be easily shaken by propaganda or external pressure. Islam's teachings offer a complete way of life, guiding believers in every aspect, from personal conduct and family life to business dealings and spiritual growth. This comprehensive system creates individuals who are disciplined in their actions, strong in their convictions, and resilient in the face of adversity. What the West fears is the strength that comes from this complete submission to a higher purpose. When a person truly follows Islam, they are not easily swayed by material temptations, political manipulation, or cultural trends. They live by principles that are constant, grounded in divine revelation, and unchanging regardless of worldly circumstances. This makes them resistant to many of the tools of control that secular powers use to dominate populations: consumerism, debt, entertainment, and moral decay. A person whose identity and self-worth are anchored in faith is far more difficult to manipulate than one who constantly seeks validation from fleeting worldly achievement. Moreover, Islam's concept of unity, the Ummah, transcends race, nationality, and economic class. It creates a global bond that threatens the very systems of division that Western powers have historically used to control the world. When Muslims unite around shared values and a common purpose, they form a force far stronger than any political or military alliance. This unity is not based on temporary interest, but on a deep spiritual brotherhood that stretches across generations. The West fears this because it exposes the weakness of its own systems. Systems often built on exploitation, division, and temporary pleasures. The discipline that Islam instills threatens to expose the emptiness at the core of materialistic cultures that prioritize self-interest over collective well-being. In a world where so many are lost in a sea of confusion and moral uncertainty, Islam's clarity, structure, and sense of purpose offer a powerful alternative. And it is this alternative, not violence, not extremism, that the West truly fears, because it holds the potential to inspire hearts and awaken millions who are searching for something deeper than what modern secularism can offer. One of the most powerful aspects of Islam that unsettles the West is the unmatched global unity it fosters. With over 2 billion followers spread across every continent, Islam binds people of different races, languages, and cultures into one brotherhood, the Ummah. This unity is not a political alliance driven by temporary interests, but a deeply rooted spiritual bond built upon shared beliefs, values, and a collective identity that transcends national borders. In a world where global powers often rely on division to maintain control, the sight of Muslims from every corner of the earth standing side by side in prayer, fasting together during Ramadan, and sharing a unified direction towards Makkah is a quiet but profound display of solidarity that many find intimidating. The Western model thrives on separating people into categories, race, class, nationality, ideology, to control populations and maintain global dominance. Division fuels competition, weakens alliances, and makes it easier to manipulate public opinion. But Islam erases these divisions by declaring that all believers, regardless of background, are equal in the eyes of Allah. The color of one's skin, the language one speaks, or the wealth one possesses holds no value compared to the sincerity of faith and righteous action. This principle unites not only individuals, but entire communities across the globe, creating a network of support that cannot be easily broken. On global power, see millions of Muslims gathering for Hajj, standing shoulder to shoulder, chanting the same words, performing the same rituals with perfect discipline. It serves as a visible reminder of what true unity looks like. This unity is not organized by governments or corporations, but is driven by belief and obedience to the same divine message. Such a brotherhood has the potential to challenge global structures that depend on division and inequality to sustain themselves. Furthermore, this sense of brotherhood extends into political and social struggles. When Muslims are oppressed in one part of the world, the pain is felt across the Ummah. The solidarity seen in support for Palestine, the concern for the Uyghur Muslims, the prayers for the suffering in Syria, Yemen, or Kashmir, all demonstrate a living, breathing global network that is awake and aware. This deep collective empathy is something the West fears because it fosters resistance against oppression and undermines the narrative that Muslims are isolated or divided. A united ummah, driven not by politics but by faith, represents a formidable challenge to those who wish to dominate by keeping people fragmented and powerless. The economic dimension of Islam presents one of the most significant and often overlooked challenges to Western financial dominance. At the core of Islamic economics is a system built on justice, fairness, and balance, directly opposing many of the exploitative practices that have come to define global capitalism. The Islamic prohibition of interest, or riba, strikes directly at the foundation of Western financial institutions, which thrive on lending money at interest and trapping individuals, businesses, and even entire nations in cycles of debt. Islamic finance promotes profit sharing, risk sharing, and ethical investment, creating an economic model where wealth circulates more fairly, debt is minimized, and exploitation is systematically removed. Islam's economic principles challenge the West's reliance on consumerism and endless credit. In many Western societies, people are encouraged to borrow beyond their means, driven by marketing and material desires that leave them in perpetual financial bondage. Islamic teachings, on the other hand, encourage financial responsibility, moderation in consumption, and living within one's means. Zakat, the obligatory charity, ensures that wealth flows from the rich to the poor, reducing poverty and creating a system where economic dignity is preserved even for society's most vulnerable. This redistribution of wealth, mandated by faith, directly confronts the Western model that allows wealth to concentrate in the hands of a few while millions suffer under crushing debt. Moreover, Islamic finance is rapidly growing on a global scale, with many non-hustling investors recognizing its stability and ethical foundation. This growth threatens the monopoly of Western financial institutions that have long dictated the terms of global trade and finance. If more nations, especially in the Muslim world, adopt Islamic financial systems and reduce their dependency on Western-controlled markets, the balance of global economic power could shift dramatically. This potential shift alarms those who benefit from the current financial order, where debt dependency ensures political leverage and control over weaker economies. The fear is not just that Islamic finance offers a different way of managing money, but that it offers a path to true independence, a freedom from the grip of international financial institutions that have long been tools of global dominance. This economic freedom, rooted in faith and justice, poses a quiet but powerful threat to those who rely on control through financial manipulation. The cultural power of Islam poses one of the most profound challenges to Western dominance because it offers a complete alternative to the moral framework that underpins much of modern Western society. In a world where individualism, materialism, and the pursuit of personal pleasure are promoted as the highest goals, Islam calls its followers to something entirely different, a life of discipline, purpose, and responsibility. This is not just a personal code. It is a full civilization model that governs family, community, governance, economics, and even international relations. The West fears this cultural strength because it exposes the cracks in its own system, which is increasingly plagued by moral confusion, broken families, rising mental health crises, and a generation lost in the pursuit of empty pleasures. Islam emphasizes the importance of family as the cornerstone of society, assigning clear responsibilities and rights to parents, children, spouses, and communities. This stable family structure contrasts sharply with the disintegration of family values seen across much of the Western world, where divorce rates soar, children grow up without strong guidance, and generational conflicts weaken the social fabric. The moral clarity that Islam provides on issues of sexuality, modesty, and gender roles stands in stark opposition to the fluid and often confusing narratives promoted by modern secular cultures. For those who profit from industries built on sexualization, consumerism, and the constant stimulation of desires, Islam's firm boundaries represent a threat not only to business, but to the entire cultural model they export globally. Moreover, Islam's emphasis on community responsibility and collective well-being directly challenges the hyper-individualism that defines much of Western thinking. In Islam, success is not measured solely by personal achievement, but by one's service to others, one's contribution to justice, and one's responsibility before God. This sense of accountability fosters stronger, more resilient communities that can withstand the waves of social decay and moral emptiness that erode many modern societies. For Western powers that seek to spread their cultural model globally through media, entertainment, and soft power, the rising appeal of Islam's disciplined, purpose-driven lifestyle presents a significant obstacle. The fear lies in the potential for Islam's values to spread, offering a clear, disciplined, and fulfilling way of life that many in the West are beginning to crave as they witness the emptiness left by material excess. Islam's cultural strength is not dependent on governments or media empires. It is rooted in timeless truths that resonate across cultures and generations. This quiet, steady cultural resilience is what truly alarms those who wish to maintain global dominance through the spread of moral confusion and cultural dependency. While the West invests heavily in weapons, advanced technology, media control, and economic sanctions to maintain its global dominance, Islam cultivates a different kind of power, the unbreakable strength of the human soul. This spiritual strength is not something that can be manufactured in laboratories, bought in markets, or won through military campaigns. It is built through faith, discipline, and a deep sense of purpose that transcends material concern. A believer who truly submits to the will of Allah carries within them a peace and certainty that no amount of external pressure can easily shake. This is the real power that unnerves Western powers, for it is a form of resistance that their traditional tools of control struggle to penetrate. In a world where many are slaves to their desires, constantly chasing fleeting pleasures and vulnerable to emotional manipulation, the Muslim who prays 5 times a day, fasts for an entire month, gives in charity regularly, and strives to control their ego, stands out as a beacon of inner strength. This spiritual discipline creates individuals who are patient in hardship, grateful in prosperity, and unwavering in the face of trials. They find contentment not in wealth, fame, or material success, but in fulfilling their duty to their Creator. This kind of resilience is terrifying to those who rely on fear, debt, and entertainment to control societies. A spiritually strong individual is far less likely to submit to oppression, compromise their principles for comfort, or abandon their values when threatened. History has shown that this inner strength allows Muslims to endure even the harshest conditions of war, occupation, and oppression while maintaining their dignity. Western powers have seen time and again how military superiority cannot break the will of people who believe their ultimate reward lies not in this life, but in the hereafter. This is why oppressive regimes and occupiers often target religious identity first, attempting to weaken faith through propaganda, bans, and forced assimilation. They know that as long as the heart remains connected to Allah, external control remains fragile and temporary. The West fears this spiritual power because it offers a model of resistance that is immune to many of their most effective weapons. When a person believes that life itself is a test and that true victory lies beyond this world, they become nearly impossible to subdue through conventional means. This strength allows communities to rebuild after devastation, to continue resisting long after the world assumes they are defeated, and to inspire others across the globe who are seeking a deeper, more meaningful way to face the challenges of life. The fear of Islam that exists in the West is not something new. It is a fear rooted in history, one that stretches back centuries to the time of the Crusades, colonialism, and beyond. From the very beginning, Western powers have viewed the rise and resilience of Islam as a serious challenge to their expansionist ambitions. The early Muslim empires, with their rapid growth, intellectual achievements, and military strength, disrupted the balance of power in ways that Europe could not ignore. The Crusades were not simply religious wars, they were also a response to the growing influence and dominance of Islam in lands that the West coveted. This historical memory remains deeply embedded in the Western psyche, influencing modern attitudes toward the Muslim world. During the colonial period, European powers systematically dismantled Muslim empires, drawing artificial borders, exploiting resources, and imposing foreign rule to weaken Islamic unity. They understood that as long as Muslims remain united under a strong identity and governed by Islamic principles, their control would always be threatened. Colonial administrators often targeted Islamic scholars, institutions, and traditions in an effort to break the spiritual backbone of the societies they sought to dominate. Yet, despite decades of occupation, exploitation, and cultural erosion, Islam continued to survive and reemerge stronger after every attempt to suppress it. In the modern era, as Muslim nations gained independence, the West shifted its strategy from direct colonization to indirect control through political interference, economic dependency, military interventions, and cultural infiltration. Still, the revival of Islamic identity across the world persists. often gaining momentum after every attempt to weaken it. Every time Muslims face oppression, whether in Palestine, Kashmir, Bosnia, or elsewhere, global solidarity among Muslims strengthens rather than fades. Each failed attempt to crush Islamic resilience adds to the growing anxiety in Western capitals that Islam's strength lies not in weapons or governments, but in the hearts of its people. The historical pattern is clear. Every effort to weaken Islam has only served to expose its unbreakable core. This pattern unsettles Western powers because it suggests that Islam's revival is not simply a passing trend, but an inevitable return to strength that no amount of external pressure can permanently suppress. The persistence of Islam through centuries of warfare, colonization, and cultural warfare is a living proof of its enduring power. What the West fears most is not just Islam's presence, but its unstoppable resurgence, a return that could once again challenge the global order built on centuries of division, exploitation, and control. And so, when you strip away the headlines, the propaganda, the fear-mongering, you find the real truth. The West isn't afraid of violence. It's not afraid of extremism. What it fears